Hey guys, it's Nicole with Life's Sweeter Side. And remember those St. Patrick's Day cookies that we made with the Oreo cookies and cream mix? Well, they were awesome. And now we're going to actually decorate them. So when you start out, I'm actually going to keep this fairly simple. And I only have really 3 colors. I know there's a different shade of green. But when you're first starting out and just beginning with decorating and stuff, I would say just to start out simple. Try not to use more than like 3 colors because you'll start to get overwhelmed, and then it'll feel like your cookies are never done because you're putting so many colors. As you get better at it, and you've had more practice, and it's really a lot easier for you, then incorporating those extra colors and making it really detailed will be much easier for you to do. Okay, so let's start with the shamrock, and I'm just going to kind of wing it as we go, see what kind of decorations I want to do. So the first one I think I'm going to do is kind of like the Irish flag, do the different colors, the red, white, and green. So I'm just going to take an edible marker. There's tons of different kinds that you can get. This one I just happen to have already in there. It's not showing up too well. Let's try a different one. This one's black. I don't like to use black too much just because it shows up. So let's kind of do it a little bit. Do it as lightly as we can. Okay, we'll start out with the green. So let me get these colors out of the way. And I'm gonna just cup. I'm using these tipless bags. So it's easier to use. You can use tips or you can use tipless bags. I think it's just easier because I don't have tips to clean. Now, if I do flowers or something like that, then I will use a tip. However, for me, it's easier to not have to have all that cleaning. So then I always just kind of try a spot over here on my paper just to see how thick it is. Just grab a paper towel. I like to clean the tip off as I'm going to. Okay, so we're gonna start out with green. And I'm gonna start out with outlining first, and then I will fill in. And this takes some practice too. You'll kind of get your own style of it done. So first I outline and then I start to fill in. And what I like about filling in is I can kind of push these up a little bit if I need to. And I just give it more pressure as I'm filling in to get a thicker fill so it doesn't take me forever. Okay, and then you can just kind of shake it a little bit, get it smoothed out, and you'll notice that it's gonna start smoothing out on its own. And then I take one of these little sticks. You can also use a toothpick, so don't think you have to go out and buy everything when you're first starting out, just trying this stuff. You just use a toothpick if you want to. So I'm just gonna kind of smooth it to how I want it. This could be a little bit more rounded. Okay. And if you see any holes or anything like that, you just kind of... Now, as you're doing this, I could set this aside and wait for it to dry. I'm gonna put a little bit more green on here. I think it's gonna be too skinny, so I'm just gonna put, because you kind of want equal numbers here, or equivalent size in each one of the colors that we're gonna do. So as I was saying, you could set this aside, let it dry, and then put your next color on, or at least let it get somewhat dry. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna show very definite change in colors as far as you might see a little line along here. And sometimes for some cookies you like that. Sometimes people like that in general. But I'm gonna do it right away so that it just is a more seamless look. And since I added this, I just kind of need to mix it a little bit. Okay, so let's do the white next. And you'll notice on these tipless bags, there's a seam down the middle. I always put that towards the bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna outline. And you'll notice I'm using my left hand when I do this. It's just really to give it some support. I'm using quite a bit. I'm using one of the bigger tipless bags, holding more icing in there. And if I didn't, I would start to shake a little bit more. So I'm gonna gently shake this because I really don't want my white to be dripping into my green. So I'm gonna just gently shake that. Get my little bubbles out here. And you could even move it out to the edge a little bit more if you think you need to. Yeah, it looks like I got a little bit of green in here, little green. I have sprinkles over here, so I must have had one lying around for it to fly in there. Okay, that looks good. And again, I think I need a little bit more white, so it does help to draw the lines like I did originally, but obviously it's not scientific and it's not totally measured out, so I'm just kind of playing it by eye, if you will, just whatever looks right. Move that out to the edge a little bit more. There we go. Okay. Okay, now let's do some orange. Add a little bit more color to this. And if you're not sure how big to cut the tip, just start out really small and test it, because if it's too big, it's going to be harder to outline. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have my tip on the bottom. That's why it's kind of coming out a little strange. So let me adjust that. So just in case you wanted to know why it's better to have it on the bottom. And I think I want this a little thicker because that's coming out kind of wonky. And don't worry if it looks crazy like this. This is kind of crazy looking, I will admit, because my second little layer here, I can kind of bump it out to where I want it. So kind of straighten that line up there against the white if I wanted to. You'll see that icing is a little bit thicker. Okay, I'm going to shake this one gently, and then I see some cleanup I want to do on this. I'm making a mess. A clean paper towel. Okay. Yeah, I can see that I want to move this out to the edge a little bit more. And some people like them to go right to the edge. Others, they like to be able to see the edge of the cookie. So really, it's as you go along, you're going to learn what your style is. Everybody's is different, and that's okay. All right, so let's just set this one aside. And once you move the cookie to the pan until they dry, you really want to, don't move it so much because you could end up with craters. The top layer of the frosting of the icing could get hardened a little bit, but underneath it's not. Remember how thick that icing is. So you're gonna move it and then it's not gonna look great. Okay, so let's do this one in all white, and I'm gonna use a technique called wet on wet. And it's kind of sort of what we just did, but let's actually outline and then color the entire thing in white. Okay, and then you see I do my next line here. And this is where I can kind of bump it out a little bit more if I think I want to go closer to the edge. And some people will actually outline in one consistency and then flood in another. I like to use the same thing so I'm not switching out bags. Because trust me, it takes long enough to get your colors and your everything mixed to the right consistency to begin with. I like to just go a little bit, make it a little bit easier on myself. Okay, so that's all in white. Let's even this out a little bit. Then I'm going to take my, whatever stick you want to call this, they're called, some places call them boo-boo sticks, whatever you want. I've got a pretty one over here too that I use sometimes. Actually, I usually have 3 or 4 sitting here as I'm going, because my fingers, as you can tell, I'm kind of messy, so my fingers start to get dirty, and when I'm wiping it off, I don't want to get like all, have green frosting, green icing on here, and then it kind of gets on my white, so. Okay, so wet on wet is actually taking this wet icing, this wet cookie, and putting another color right on top of it. So as I mentioned before, with the flag one that we did, the colors of the flag, we could have waited till they dried, but we wanted a seamless flow, so I did it when each of the colors were wet. So same thing, kind of same thing here. I am going to go ahead and start, just put a design in here, I guess. Probably should have started a little bit over on that one, but this will work. I just kind of want to show you guys the technique on here. Let's do one more up here. Okay, so what you're going to see is that when this dries, I'm going to shake it just a tad. When it, I'm going to put, I'm just poking down where it's kind of sticking up a little bit where I lifted the bag. What it's going to do is it's going to dry into that white. So again, it looks more seamless. It looks like it's just part of the original icing. And what you can do is you can also kind of poke it real carefully to get it to go kind of fall down into that white a little bit quicker. Because sometimes when your icing is fairly thick, it may not fall all the way into there. So I just kind of help it out a little bit. Although I do feel like there needs to be some more green over here. And you'll do this when you're kind of winging it like I am and just creating as you go along. You'll find stuff that you want to add, you want to fix, change. Many times I'll have, like I have a sketch over here for one of them of how I want to do it. So I can do it. So this one, maybe not so pretty, but I want to show you another wet on one that I kind of have in my mind right now. So I'm going to actually ice this one in this green. It's going to look the same when it gets done. All right, let's smooth this out, and then I want to show you, I'm going to do wet on wet again, but show you another technique within that. And these are all really things that you can, as a beginner, do and practice, you know, and so you'll be making different, you won't be just icing the cookies. When you're practicing, trying to get your flooding in there, your outlining and your flooding, but you can try these other techniques that are really, you can do as a beginner. Okay, get that little thing out of there. Okay, so now I'm going to take my my lighter color green, and I'm going to use my orange. And I probably could have cut that a little thinner. Hold on just a sec, I'm gonna grab another bag so I can cut that thinner. Okay, because what I wanna do is put some stripes in here to start with. And I do wanna fix this one while I can. I am making a mess. Then I'm going to put some orange in here too. Okay, I'm going to kind of just clean up these edges a little bit first. Okay. now I'm gonna take my orange, and I'm just gonna leave this one as a thicker line. I'm gonna put it right next to my green. Almost done. I'm going to show you something pretty cool. This is flowing out really. My orange is a little thin. So I want to just clean up my edges a little bit first again. Okay, so then I'm just going to take my boo-boo stick, whatever you want to call this, and I'm just going to kind of drag it all the way down. Then I'm going to wipe it off and drag it down again. And you really want to do this as quickly as you can, because you'll see that my green on the bottom is starting to dry a little, starting to get a little bit harder consistency than the other ones. And what happens is when you drag it through, it'll just leave more marks. Or leave more, like right here, that I'm going to fix in a minute. You can tell at the very top my green was getting a little bit hard. And I'm wiping off the stick in between to kind of start with a clean one. Otherwise, the colors, I'll show you in a minute here. Otherwise, all these colors will get mixed in and you don't want it to. Okay. So I'm going to, again, clean up the sides. And you see a little separation here? When it dries, it won't look like that. It'll look, whoops, got a little orange on there. It'll look better as it dries. But I'm gonna move it over just a tiny bit, clean it up. Make me feel better. Okay. So kind of cool. All right, let's move on to the next cookie then. Next we're gonna do a top hat. And on this one, I'm gonna actually go all green to start with on this. And you'll notice all of my colors again, I think when you're starting out, to try and stick with your 3 colors. Sometimes it will take some planning, because you get to it and like, well, what the heck, how the heck am I gonna do this? I already have enough green in here, I want more colors. So plan it out ahead of time, sketch them out, and then you can kind of decide how you want each one to look. I find that when I sketch it out, not all of them look exactly the same, and I can come up with better ideas than if I'm just trying to figure it out on the fly. And don't worry about places. I'm going to show you at the top where it's kind of, where I have these spaces up here. I'm just going to, my next layer, I'm just going to push it. This is a little bit bigger cookie, so now you know what I mean by having thicker flow so that it doesn't take quite as long. Because you also want to make sure that the entire cookie has about the same level of frosting. So it could be you get to the end and it's like, oh, I'm tired of this, and you kind of get it a little thinner just to get done. You need to make sure it's all about the same, or you'll be able to see at the end when it dries if it's different. If it's thicker on the outside than it is on the inside, or vice versa. All right, I'm gonna get another, let me get another stick here. Okay, so this is actually a boo-boo stick. That's what its official name is. So this I like because I can clean up my sides a little bit better while it's wet, and it doesn't get any icing on the side of the cookie. Okay, then I see a crater over here, so I'm gonna fill that in. See part sticking up. Okay, so this I'm gonna let dry, because what I wanna do on this, to put the buckle and the belt around there, I do want to have that. I don't want to do a wet on wet technique with that, so let's go ahead and let that dry. And then let's Let's flood one in orange just to be, so I'm gonna have a lot of green. Let's try and incorporate a little bit more orange in here. So I love the flow of this orange. It's just going out so smooth, and you'll get used to that different consistencies. And this one I don't mind doing with just one hand because I'm using a smaller bag on it. There's different size bags. The larger the bag, the harder it is to kind of control, and that's why you kind of always need support. But this is flowing awesome. But that's one of the hardest things, is trying to determine what's the right consistency, because if it's too thick, it's easier to get, after it dries, you'll see little craters in it, just little holes kind of appear. They pop up on their own. And what you see me doing now, I just see some indentations that feels like it needs some more icing, so I just kind of fill it in a little bit. Okay, and all of these hats I'm actually going to let dry because I do want that buckle to stand out and not incorporate with the base layer and look like it's seamless, because I just don't want it to. I think it looks, and you could do that. A lot of people do that on everything. Do that wet, it's still wet on wet because it sinks in and looks seamless. But other times there's some cookies you want to see the definition in there. Okay. And then this next one I'm going to do a little different. I'm going to start out with a buckle is what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to draw a line, and yes, I'm going to have it white because I've got an idea I want to do with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of fill in this right now and then let it dry. And it's going to be green after the rest all around it, but let's get this part done first. Okay. And I'll straighten it out. I see a kind of poking out a little bit. I want to make it more even over here. Actually, let's pull it. See, you can see all the green and stuff on there. That's why you need a couple of these. So now I can pull the clean one, and since I'm using white, and you learn this stuff kind of the hard way when you're not used to it. When you're first starting out, it is normal, or I'd be surprised if somebody doesn't just grab that boo-boo stick, start working on your cookie, and it's like, oh shoot, there's a bunch of green in there, and I'm just doing white. So kind of like I just did right there. Okay, but I'm going to cover that with green, so it's not a big deal. All right, so let's just set this aside and let it dry. So here's the next one. This one I'm so excited for. So you'll notice I'm going to grab some clean paper towels. I didn't get enough. This next one is actually from a cookie cutter that I made on my own. I made an Easter one too, which I'll show you guys later. But this one is a pot of gold and then a rainbow. But because I decided I'm only going to use 3 colors, I'm going to do the rainbow in 3 stripes. The color, the red, orange, and the green, orange, and white. So I'm going to do those colors there. You could do the. See how messy I am? Hopefully you guys can do that cleaner, but you can do the colors of the rainbow, absolutely. Again, I think if you're as a beginner, it's better to not overwhelm yourself, because depending on how you want to do these colors, if you're using all those different colors of the rainbow, you got to let it dry, put it aside, do the next color, let it dry, and so forth. Or you can do the seamless approach, which when you have so many colors, I can't remember how many colors in a rainbow, 5 or 8 or something, but it just takes longer. And honestly, you will get overwhelmed. I've tried it. I've tried a lot of things because I always wanted to be so fabulous when I first started, and not take the time to learn all of it, and because I was too impatient. So what I did on here, again, this is a cookie cutter that I made on my 3D printer. So I just kind of started to draw out the lines just to make it a little easier on myself on where I want to end it. You don't have to do that, but I used my edible marker, if you will. This one is Sweet Sugar Belle. And then Food Writer by Wilton, there's some good ones, are really good. The black I sometimes use, just depending on my colors, but you can see it through the white, and I didn't want to worry about that. So with this, I again want to see definition, so I'm going to kind of do a couple. I'm going to start out with the pot. I'm actually going to make it green. I didn't do any black. Black can be a little tricky to make. It'll show up as kind of dark gray. If you let it sit there for a while, it kind of develops a color, but it also, it shows up on your lips and teeth a lot of times, so I don't want to have to do that. So depending on the cookies, and it doesn't always taste that great. Black can get pretty bitter if you put too much black color in there. Red is the same way, so you kind of want to taste it after you make it to make sure it's going to taste okay. All right, so let's go ahead and start outlining the pot here. I'm not sure if you can see my lines real well, but I do have the kind of an outline here. It's gonna just kind of making some for the gold. It can be, that really doesn't matter on the bottom. That's where I'm gonna put all my little gold pieces. Okay, and then, as I'm doing this, I will be able to go up because I've got another layer of gold on top of the pot. I'm going to be able to start working on my rainbow as well, so I can get a couple of colors done here. All right, so let's kind of clean this guy up. It's always my edges I always have to get, it seems like. Kind of, and if you see it, so you can see where my outline, some people like a definite outline, so you'll see when people use different consistencies, it's because they want to see the outline of this, let's say of this pot. They'll see the outline, and then, which is different, it's kind of like, you see the definition, outside of the actual picture, and they would probably do it on all of the components here. Okay, so I see a little hole there. And I can see a little, you probably can't see this on camera, but because of my circles, you see a couple places where it seems a little thinner. So I'm just gonna add a little bit here, and then I'll kind of shake it to straighten it out. And the bottom is okay. I'm just gonna fill that with a color and put some gold on the bottom. Put some gold. I have some gold, I don't know what you want to call those things. Those are just from Michaels. They have a pretty cute little assortment of, well, they have a lot, actually, a pretty good assortment of all of their sprinkles, but they always have some holiday ones, and those are the St. Patrick's Day ones. They have clovers and the little pieces of gold. Okay, so there's my pot. And let's do the green part of the rainbow. And I'm gonna let it dry because I think, actually no, on the rainbow I don't want definition in between there. So I'm gonna actually I'll go right to my next color after this. Just like I did on the shamrock cookie. Now, when you're doing this different colors, and since I have the pot done below and it's drying earlier than this one will, I really want to be careful when I go to kind of shake it a little bit, because this top layer is already starting to harden. And what's going to happen is it's going to shake the icing down below that, and it will create streaks, and it just won't look as good. And I'm not going to worry about this down here because, again, I'm putting gold, so I don't really care if that's not straight. Okay, so let's do our next color. Let's put the white in next so we can have that seamless flow since it's a rainbow. So let's do the outline first. And it helps to draw on here, even though my layers or my stripes of the rainbow are probably not real even. If you draw it out, they'll be a little bit more so than if you're just trying to wing it. Unless you're a true artist, which I'm not, and can do that kind of stuff. to make it look fabulous. Okay, let's see, I got green on there. So let's kind of dig that out a little bit. Okay, let me clean up the bottom here. There we go. Now let's put a little bit of orange. And then we're gonna set it aside because I want the green down here to dry before I add all of that gold. So let's outline for our orange. I'm gonna be careful bumping up against the white for a couple reasons. One, this orange is pretty, thinner consistency. It's just not as thick. So it flows a lot easier. I kind of like that color of the rainbow. I mean, I prefer the colors we already have. Where'd I put it? There we go. I prefer the natural colors of the rainbow, but this is kind of cool looking. I like this. It's good to be a little different. If you definitely look on Pinterest and all of those, Facebook, whatever it is for ideas, but it's very important that you try to come up with your own. Not always that easy. So sometimes I try to think of things, and if I can't, then I'll go over to Pinterest. And don't get me wrong, there's many ideas I have got from Pinterest. But it is important that if you're going to do that and post anything, you want to make sure you give credit to the original person, because that's not your idea. Okay, so let's set it aside, because really all we have left is I'm going to add a handle probably to the pot, and then I'm going to put my gold down here. So let's just set this aside. Okay, I'm back. So I wanted to give these some time to dry and let the frosting harden. So these are the two that I'm going to, I'm going to go ahead and finish these two. And the clovers, or the shamrocks, I should say, those were pretty much, I've got them in back of me, but I showed you what I wanted to with that. So let's set this rainbow and pot of gold aside. Let's work on the hat first. And remember, I said I wanted to kind of go with some different, or just with these three basic colors again. So I chose the orange hat, and I just use a brush. Sometimes, as you can tell, I'm kind of messy and I need to get better about that. But, and I just did a boo-boo. So if that happens, which is as you can tell, the icing is not totally dry, I am going to fill it this way, take my orange, and I really did not mean to do that, but it's kind of cool that I get to show you how I fix these. Then I'm going to take my scraper very softly, scrape over the top, and very softly because I don't want to create any more issues, but I want to get that kind of even so that when it dries, you can't tell. Okay. So now I'll be more careful, but I'm going to put the belt on here, and I'm going to actually use my lighter green that I have to do that, because usually there's some kind of a belt on here. So let's go ahead and just draw that on. And fill it in. And I will put a buckle on here too. Now, sometimes I do have some gold that I'll put the buckle on, put it in gold, but I really want this to be, I want you, if you're just starting out, just trying cookies, I want this to be something that you can do without having to go out and buy all this fancy stuff, which, trust me, you'll end up doing that once you start doing this more and realize all of the things you can do with it, because there's just some cool techniques out there along with colors. I mean, gold, silver, rose gold, anything, any kind of sparklies. And I love sparklies on mine, on all my stuff. So if you look through my cookies, you'll see a lot of that. Okay, oh, I see a little bit I need to get down in the middle here. And my hands are kind of clumsy, so I always have to be really careful, as you can tell. Okay. So I do have some really cool sprinkles and stuff, again, that I talked about from Michaels. So I've got like these, the coins. I do have some, oh yeah, here they are. I have some shamrocks too, which I think I might, you know what I might do? Here's another cool way to cover up kind of a boo-boo that you make. is put something over it. You can either put a flower, frosting. I'm actually gonna put a shamrock on there. And I use the tweezers just because my fat fingers are always messing it up. Okay, so I want to let this dry a little bit so that when I put my buckle on, it can go over. So let's move over to the pot of gold and the rainbow. So remember, I left these spaces here for my gold, however I decided to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually now going to fill it in with green. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to actually use these gold coins. Well, by using these gold coins, it's not going to fill in all my spaces. So it's either I'm going to see cookie in between, or I really want it just to look like I see the pot in between. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill this in, even though, like I said, another idea for this, instead of using these sprinkles, I know that's kind of weird. I feel weird calling them sprinkles because they're so huge, but is you could use maybe some white royal icing, and then like I mentioned, there's some gold that you can paint on there. TMP has some good gold. I would just make sure that it's edible. TMP is usually more just for decoration, but find an edible gold that you can put on there, and you could make these big circles of maybe in white, let them dry, and then paint them with the gold. So they're just really big coins, a lot even bigger than what I have on there. So I'm just kind of straightening it. It doesn't have to be perfect since I'm putting these on. So now I'm just gonna pick these up. Again, I'm using tweezers because of my fingers, and I'm just gonna kind of place these wherever I think they'll go. And these are pretty big. That's why I think that, you know, maybe using icing and painting it gold would work really cool too. So, of course, some people like sprinkles. They're pretty good. They're just little candies. Just kind of put them wherever. You kind of want to look like they fell, I guess. It's okay if they're sticking up or whatever. Now, if you didn't want to put something on that is that size, you could always use, there's these little stars, which I think I'm going to put some of those on in between, in the in-between spaces here. I feel like there's just too much green on there. So I'm going to take, these stars are smaller, and just kind of, well, maybe I'll use my tweezers. I was going to try and sprinkle them in, but I don't know if they're going to fall like I want them to. So kind of fill in a little bit, get rid of some of that green where the pot probably isn't going to keep continuing down there. So these are fun for, you know, as kids when you're at school and think about St. Patrick's Day, all the decorations. It's always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and so it's always fun to kind of throw in some stuff that you remember as a kid. Okay, so that's kind of at the bottom. Now I want to put some up here too. Now another thing is you could use this kind of sprinkles. It's kind of like little glitter, which that's kind of cool looking too. So let me go ahead and put some green. Actually, you know what I might do on this one? I might do white up here. And maybe just kind of spot it. Let's see how it's gonna look. Let's just put some dots on here where we think we might put sprinkles. Let's try it this way, just because I don't want to have all that green up there again. Oops. Let's pour some of these out, find my opening here. Okay. Let's just kind of do this. And I'm just trying to really cover the white icing now so that there's no white showing through. Oh, this works. Let's put one down in there. Okay, and I think that looks okay. What I'll probably do is maybe fill in a little bit more of my white down here. Now this is, darn it. So obviously The more you start doing, the more you're gonna see things that you wanna improve on. No, actually, I'm gonna just move these a little bit. I don't wanna move them too much because I don't wanna really mess up my cookie, but once it dries, you won't be able to see all this. It'll look better once it's dry. And then I can also kind of just get rid of this white underneath if I want to when it dries. I would caution you to do it when it dries so that it doesn't get messed up right now. Or even fill in. Another thing you can do is just kind of fill it in with the color that should be there. That way. And then you can also use, that's too big of a brush to use. I'm gonna use my Boo Boo stick here just to kind of fill it in. Okay. And again, these are good for even when the icing is dry, it's a little easier to get them off. Okay, there we go. How cute is that? All right, so let's pull the hat back over and let's put a buckle on this. So I used the lighter green for the band. Let's go ahead and use the darker green so we have some contrast on there for the buckle, and just really put that wherever you want it. I'm just gonna put it right here. Kind of a big buckle, but I want it to really stand out. And then I think I'll do this so it's got a, you can use black, of course, if you want to make some black, but again, unless you have, black is one of those that I'll make some and keep it in my freezer, just so I have it made already, because it can be kind of tricky when you're first making it to make sure it's getting the black that you want, or getting as black as you want it, I should say, because it'll look dark gray at first, really dark gray. Just put it, let it sit there. Sometimes I let it sit there overnight. I would say at least several hours to develop the color. This is the same with red. And then test it out. And once you do that, it will also get darker as it dries. Okay, and then I'm gonna also take, no, I'm not. I was gonna put a shamrock, but I already have one shamrock on there. So really, very basic. Again, when you're just starting out, I don't think you need to get too fancy with this. Because you really just want to practice and try things out. Lots of different things you can do. So that's it. If you want to see more of my videos, I'll be doing Easter ones pretty soon. Just subscribe. You can go to my Facebook, which is down below, or my Instagram, and follow me as well. Thank you. And here are some of the finished product. Some of my shamrocks, leprechaun hat, and rainbow with the pot of gold. How cool.